Hey everybody, and welcome to Views on Vue. I'm Ben Hong, Senior Front-End Engineer on the Meltano team at GitLab. And today on our panel, we have Ari Clark, UI UX Engineer at Liquid.
Hello.
And today, our guest is Sebastien Chopin. Sebastian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Sebastien Chopin, and I'm a front-end developer, mostly a JavaScript developer, and I'm the creator of Nuxt.JS, a JavaScript framework based on Vuex.JS.
You also forgot to add dance extraordinaire from your Vuex.JS Amsterdam. In case anyone didn't see that tweet, we should include that in the link.
Yeah, wait, what?
Sebastian's a pretty great dancer.
Okay.
That's my secret. So now everyone is going to ask for it.
This episode is sponsored by Tidelift, the enterprise-ready open-source software managed for use solution. Tidelift provides commercial support and maintenance for the open-source dependencies you use to build your applications, backed by the project maintainers. Save time, reduce risk, and improve code health. The Tidelift subscription is managed open source for application development teams. It covers millions of open-source projects across JavaScript, Python, Java, PHP, Ruby, .NET, and more. Your subscription includes security updates from Tidelift Security Response Team that coordinates patches for new breaking security vulnerabilities and alerts immediately through a private channel so your software supply chain is always secure. Tidelift also verifies license information to enable easy policy enforcement and adds intellectual property indemnification to cover creators and users in case something goes wrong. You always have 100% up-to-date bill of materials for your dependencies to share with your legal team, customers, and partners. Tidelift ensures the software you rely on keeps working as long as you need it to work. Your managed dependencies are actively maintained, and we recruit additional maintainers when required. Tidelift helps you choose the best open source packages from the start, and then guides you through the updates to stay on the best releases as new issues arise. Take a seat at the table with the creators behind the software you use. Tidelift's participating maintainers earn more income as their software is used by more subscribers, so they're interested in knowing what you need. Tidelift supports GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and more. They support every cloud platform and other development targets too. The bottom line is you get all the capabilities you expect and require from commercial software, but now from the key open source software you depend on. Check them out at devchat.tv/Tidelift.
Sebastian, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Nuxt is for those that might not have used it?
Okay. Nuxt.JS started as a JavaScript framework for server-side rendering application based on Vuex.JS. And today it's a framework for Vuex.JS, but you can create any kind of application. It can be for a single page application like you can do with Vuex.JS, for a universal application where you have server-side rendering with a Node.js server running behind, or a static application, a static website like you can do with Gatsby or GridStorm or VuePress and host it on any CDN.
Awesome. So for those who aren't as familiar, what are some of the advantages to doing server-side rendering? Like why would I care about that? Why not just use Vuex.JS?
Well, actually, you can use Vuex.JS, but you will have to use other modules like Vue Server Rendered. Nuxt.js is here to help you get started quickly and efficiently so you can focus directly on creating your pages. What is important about server-side rendering is about SEO for search engine to be able to index your website, and also for media sharing. So when you will share your website on Google, Facebook, I don't know if I can say names, but on social medias.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So when you share it on social media, you can display directly the pictures, the title, the metadata. And on top of this, for me, what is really important is the user experience you give to your user. So when he will hit your website, he will be able to see and read and scroll. And the JavaScript will be downloaded and executed behind. So you have a fast-looking website, and then when JavaScript is loaded, it's super fast since it becomes a JavaScript application.
I've used Nuxt, and one of the things I love about Nuxt is the fact that you all handle the page routing like automatically. I don't have to go in and configure every single route. You just create the directory that you want, and Nuxt just knows to create those routes accordingly based on directory structure rather than something you manually define, which I think is pretty great.
It's true. Thank you. That's it came from PHP. I saw it with Next.js, and before even Next.js, I created this framework called PGS, which was this kind of PHP server, but for Node.js, where you have this .pgs file, and one file was one root. With Nuxt.js is the same convention, and we added this underscore file name file where you can create dynamic root also. I think that's my favorite feature of Nuxt, so I don't have to write a router anymore, just files.
Yeah,
Writing routes is just so much fun. Why would you not want to do that? Just kidding.
Too much routes. I'm sick of routes.
Yes. That sounds really convenient. So yeah, I've never used Nuxt, so this is going to be very enlightening for me. Okay, so we covered why server-side rendering, but you also mentioned that Nuxt will also help you build pages that aren't server-side renders, so spas and static pages. So why would I want to use Nuxt in one of those situations? Sell me.
Nice. Well, like Ben said, we have this pages system, so you don't have to configure a router for it. We also have other folder structures that gives you features. For instance, we have the layouts directory. So if you create a layout, by default, you have layout/default.view. You can overwrite it by creating this file. And then you can, for instance, display a header directly. And then next we'll handle the navigation and don't re-render the header when you navigate, for instance. And we also have the middle directory. You can specify when you use view and you use router.p for each, that's where we will put the middleware for you. So you create a file inside your middleware, and then you can directly use them in your pages to add a cohort for this page. So we added features on top of Vue directly to pre-configure your application and makes you save time. And what I forgot to say, and for me, it's pretty hard after 3 years to remember these first features that makes the core of Nuxt. The feature that for me adds a lot of value for the UI and for the developers is this async data function you will have. So when you create a page inside your Nuxt application, you have data, which is a Vue component, but you can also have async data. And like the name say, it can be an async function that return a promise. Inside this async data function, you will be able to call an API, for instance, like a CMS to get the content of your page. Let's say it's a blog post, and then you get it with Axios or Fetch, and then you return the data. So when you will navigate between one page to another, Nuxt will call this async data to the next page or the next page, wait for it to be finished, and then makes a transition to the other page. So you don't have to handle these promises, doing some loader for the page, because Nuxt will display a progress bar at the top, like on YouTube, and then switch to the next page. So it's a huge win and saves you a lot of development time.
So would this be kind of similar to adding route guards to handle asynchronous stuff if you're just using regular Vue, but it sounds simpler?
Exactly. And you also work with server-side rendering because Nuxt will wait for async data to be done before rendering the page.
Yeah, it sounds a lot easier than using route guards because those can get messy really fast.
I agree. That's why of course, it also handled this child view because with Vue router, you can have parent and child. And with Nuxt, we came out with this idea of if you have a file, let's say we call it parent.vue, and you have a directory called parent, then the parent directory will be children of this parent.vue page directly. So it all works with file names.
That's smart. I like it.
One thing I forgot, which is pretty cool, is most of the time when you have a big Vue application, or it can be a medium size, you want to use Vuex, but because it's not required for any Vue project, with Nuxt is disabled by default. And if you want to use Vuex and have a state, you just have to create a store directory. And inside your index.js file, you can directly export a state, mutation, and actions. And Nuxt will directly import it and create the Vuex store. And same for the pages, you can have each file, let's say todos.js inside store, we directly create a Vuex namespace for you. And so it's the same logic as pages.
So speaking of Vuex and this async data, so could I, in theory, just use a Vuex action as my asynchronous operation if I needed to? Because, let's say, in my case, generally, all of my data fetching I do through Vuex. So I could, assuming that my action returns a promise, I could just do it that way.
Yeah, You can put all of your logic inside your store, and inside your pages, you can just dispatch the store action inside async data. So it will just wait. Actually, that's the power of Nuxt.JS. You don't have to use the store to do this asynchronous call. And because the pages inside Nuxt, so all the page, the view, the component used for the pages inside View Router, they are code splitted by default, which make your code in your pages to fetch the async data code splitted as well, which saves you bytes of codes and makes your application faster. If you have other questions, I'm happy to answer all of them.
So Sebastian, I've also heard some really great things about page transitions with Nuxt. I know Sarah Drasner uses them a lot in her live coding demos. Can you tell people about how that works in Nuxt?
Yeah, definitely. I do love transition, and I wanted it by default inside Nuxt when I created Nuxt. So what I did is I wrapped the root of view component with the transition component, like it's recommended in the View Router documentation. And by default, I give the transition name to page directly. And the mode is out-in. So this way, by default, you won't have transition because Vue detects that you didn't add the classes in the CSS. But as soon as you add these classes in your CSS, it will directly apply the transition. And what I did for, let's say that you have specific transition between two pages or most of the pages, but between page A to page C, you want another transition. So what you can do is in your page component, in your file, you can export transition as a string. So in your view component, you say transition bounce, and this page will have the bounce transition. And you just have to define the CSS, or you can use the JavaScript transition as well.
Wow, that sounds a lot better than trying to handle that with regular Vue, because trying to have multiple different page transitions gets interesting. In fact, I'm not sure I ever successfully did it. So that sounds really useful. Well, I don't always want everything to look the same. Some things are special, and it should show that they're special.
They are.
So what other fun things does Nuxt give me out of the box? Because, it sounds like there's just a bunch of little fun nuggets everywhere. So tell me some more.
You have the transition, you have the pages transition, and then I will keep simple. You have this templating, so pages layout. You can also customize the app if you want to have some comments for IE or other browsers. But what we included as well is, so inside Nuxt, you will have Vue, View Router, Vuex, optional if you add the store directory, and you will have Vue Meta, which is actually a library that we maintain. So it's on the Nuxt repository and is recommended. And I know that VuePress Gridsom is using it, and it's to manage your head elements. So for SEO, your title, meta tags, even your script on the body or head, it's included by default. So in your page, if you want to add a title, you just have to export the head attribute, and then it's an object, and you just say title, and that becomes the title of your page. So it's really easy to manage head element with Nuxt. And because we configured Webpack, so Webpack is inside Nuxt, you don't have to manage any Webpack configuration or maintain any Webpack configuration. We work pretty hard to maintain it for most of the user. You can extend it, of course, but by default, it's inside Nuxt. So you don't have to think about this, and we handle it on the pre-processor. So Sass, less stylus. We handle also post-CSS, so it works well with Tailwind. And so same for any file, pictures, audio file.
Yeah, so I think that's really helpful that you help to manage the Webpack. I know that's something that a lot of people try to avoid as much as possible, because Webpack is not the most grokkable for most people. I noticed too that on Nuxt you all have a whole plugin ecosystem, right? Yeah.
So in Nuxt you have plugins and module. I think when we created it, it was not the best name to have plugins and module. So to explain them easily, plugins are your plugins for your Vue application, and modules are higher featured plugins. Let's say modules can add plugin for your Vue application. A module can extend the Webpack configuration of your Nuxt project. a module can add a server middleware. It can change completely how Nuxt will work underneath. So modules are Nuxt plugins, and plugins are just your plugins for your Vue application. So that's where you will use Vue plugins, actually.
So Sebastian, in terms of like plugins and modules, so if you wanted like your pages to be markdown focused rather than like actual Vue components, like would the markdown like compiler be a plugin then, or is it more of a module? Like how does this work if you wanted to change this?
Yeah, actually you could use markdown by using some Webpack loader directly. So I know that we have some modules that you can install, add it as inside your module sections, and it will directly support this markdown file that will be transpiled with Webpack to HTML, and then you can use this HTML in your Vue file. But we also have another system for Markdown that we are working on, which is called Nuxt.JS. The name is kind of similar as Vuex, but it's two different words. Actually, it will make an API out of the Markdown directly, and then we will call this API that will send back HTML inside the pages with async data, which is another approach. I believe both approaches are great. We took this approach to be experimental and try out another area of the Markdown and see what we can do with that. It's experimental and it's on Nuxt.Press directly, and Jonas and Pim are actually working on this.
That's really cool. Yeah, as someone who got involved with the Vuepress core team, it's great to see more sort of Markdown-centered authoring for this kind of stuff. So I think that's really great that Nuxt is doing this. I'll definitely check it out.
I know that MTX is quite popular in the React world, and it's quite good because you can import components. We were missing this in Vue. I just saw that Gridsome with the v0.7 released a source plugin for Gridsome that can support these imports also. And that's, I think we're going to have an MDV soon. So that's pretty good news.
Yeah, you can definitely do this in Vuepress, but to your point, I think this needs to be more standardized so that obviously we're maintaining the same compiler.
I think we can combine our efforts to have a standard for MDV.
I like MDV. Yeah, just to emphasize for those listening, basically allowing you to use Vue components inside your Markdown. So giving you more sort of control over like the authoring and content experience. Because sometimes, you do want to take your content beyond just simple paragraphs and headings and lists, and you want to do dynamic things like including a live, counter or calculator for tax purposes. Like it really starts to expand your ability to create really interesting content for your users.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. We'll definitely make sure to include links to Nuxt.Press in the show notes.
So tell us a little bit more about, there's this movement lately, Jamstack and static sites, air quotes on static. Tell me a little bit more about how Nuxt enables a quality developer experience with that type of application.
Yeah, so it all started when my brother joined me with Nuxt.JS. It was October 2016. He was working with Exo, which was a Node.js static generator, like Jekyll, but for Node.js. And when I created the first draft of Nuxt, which was having Webpack pages, and then you have a universal application, he asked me if it was possible to generate this HTML and save it as an HTML file so he can host it on his GitHub pages. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's try. So I added this Nuxt generate command. He was reading the pages directory because it generated the Vue router configuration. We know the routes. And because we know the routes, we can generate them. So we call our renderer, saving the HTML to a dist directory. And then we're able to directly upload this dist directory to any CDN. So that's how Nuxt get inside this static website. And then the Jamstack word came out. So we learned that it was a new trendy thing that we didn't know that it existed in React world. And to have this JavaScript application, which is not a static website where you click the link below the page, but when it's loaded, it feels like a single page application. So That's really, really powerful because you can actually design your application, use async data like you usually do, calling your API, and then we will generate all of your links as a snapshot at build time, and you can upload it. So you don't have to manage a server. Your pages are really, really fast because it's hosted on a CDN, and you don't have any security issue. Well, you have less security issue because you don't have to manage a server. That's actually pretty powerful, and most of the website on the internet can actually be static.
And so also as a brief recap for those that aren't familiar with the Jamstack acronym, can you just explain to people what Jamstack is?
So what Jamstack is, from my point of view, is a universal application. So what you will have when you go on the website, it will answer fast. Then you will have JavaScript, which will be loaded. And when you will navigate, it will be a client-side navigation, so no reload. What it also stands for me, is that you have static hosting. So your page that you are hitting when you put the address in your browser is a cached version of your page. And finally, the markup, the API you will use behind doesn't depend of a specific platform. It can be you can hit the API of WordPress or any kind of CMS or e-commerce, and it just generates a snapshot of your website that you're navigating. And then the question is how often you regenerate these pages. And that's where the beauty is. It's like always a cached version of your website, but you have no server, so quite no cost. Like back in the 2000. We're just going back on time.
Seemed that long ago, but now that I think about it.
Oh, I know, it was though.
2000 was 19 years ago? Oh my God.
Yeah,
and we all feel old now.
I know. Remember dial-up modems?
I do. I can still hear that sound.
Mom, get off the phone. Take me off the modem.
I was fancy. We had 2 phone lines.
Ooh. I had 56 kilobytes. It was great.
Oh, I remember 28K. So
I remember having a CD-ROM that gave me internet.
Oh, yes.
That was such a strange feeling.
I think my favorite internet company was Net Zero at the time.
That's a good one.
And like Juno. I think those are the two.
Oh, yeah, Juno. That was a classic. We got totally off topic there.
That's totally okay. We're including it in the podcast.
Bonuses.
Yeah, I guess like for me, it actually took me a long time to wrap my head around the concept of Jamstack. I think partly because in a lot of ways, yeah, it's just sort of like a new fancy label on top of things we already know.
Yeah.
There was this disconnect because I'm like, well, this sounds like this thing, but they're telling me it's this new thing, so it can't be that. And then in a lot of ways, it really is just that.
Remember how you did website 20 years ago? Well, that's Jamstack. But don't include this in the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. If I was like, oh yeah, cool. It's nothing new. I hope that helps someone else out there who's like, still like, what is Jamstack? Yeah. Like, I hear it. I've heard like 5 billion explanations. I still don't get it. It's what you think it is.
Yeah. Data at the API level, Markdown, JavaScript to help make everything dynamic.
Well, I do believe that API is what is different than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You just get the data from it.
The biggest disconnect for me was, like everyone's like, oh, it's serverless. That's another thing that I find really misleading. But
serverless.
Every time I say static website, people say, oh, it's serverless. I'm like, no, it's different.
Yeah.
People are lost. Everyone's lost. We don't know what we do on the web.
Right? Yeah. I'm glad you agree with that. I guess for me, like it finally clicked when I was like, okay, everyone's talking about it in this like really broad, like application context. And I was like, what if I just thought about it as I wanted to create like a pretty facade for like the Chuck Norris joke database? That could be Jamstack. Because I've totally done that, but whatever. Which, if you haven't played with that API, it is really entertaining. So if you're sad one day, the Chuck Norris joke database will always make you happy. I promise.
We're going to include that in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, we have to. And if you're not familiar with Chuck Norris jokes, you need to familiarize yourself right now.
Yeah, I just realized that. Is that an American thing?
I mean, I would assume so.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Chuck Norris, Sebastian?
Yeah, I think my internet connection stopped at one time and you guys freezed. So I think I know some of Chuck Norris jokes. I used to watch Walker, Texas Ranger every Sunday at noon. So yeah, okay. I do love Chuck Norris.
Don't we all?
We have no choice anyway.
Right, yeah. I mean, even if you don't like Chuck Norris jokes are incredible.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give you full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code devchat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code devchat at Sentry.io.
So as far as Nuxt goes, do you have any upcoming, releases or anything that you can tell us about?
Yeah. So one thing that is coming soon, I hope this week, otherwise next week, is the new website design for Nuxt.JS.org. So it's for the documentation. We added some pages with the logos, with the support we do for companies and the presentation of the team and other stuff. At the same time, I'm also working on the full static mode, which is a true snapshot of your application, and it goes inside this Jamstack static site features area. So we directly work with the PWA module that makes your website offline capable directly. And also inside the generate part, normally when you have dynamic routes, you have to specify them to Nuxt. So you may have to call your API, get all the pages, give the routes to Nuxt so we can generate. With the upcoming version, I did a kind of crawler inside, like a Google. So we will generate the homepage, and then Nuxt will follow all the links and generate all of these pages. So let's say on your homepage, you call your API, you list your blog post, and Nuxt will see directly this list and see all the Nuxt links, generate all the pages automatically. So you won't have to specify your dynamic routes anymore.
Whoa, that's really cool.
Yeah. Actually, we use it for Nuxt.JS.org. It's only 2 simple Nuxt modules, and the crawler is actually 50 lines of code. But I just need to put this crawler inside Nuxt core so everyone can enjoy it directly. But it's easier to say than to do, for sure. But
it always is.
Yeah, we always forgot the test. So
who writes tests?
Yeah, except when you have to maintain a framework. But even though people don't really look at the test,
but they're there for your safety, right?
Yeah. Every time I'm happy when I change something and I see test failing, I'm like, wow, that was such
right?
a good thing to write this test. We're 90% minimum. For us, it's like
wow,
minimum threshold.
That's impressive.
I think it's 15 minutes if I want to run next test. So I usually push on a branch and wait for Circle CI because it's way faster than my computer for the test. So,
wait, which service was that?
Circle CI.
Yeah.
Circle CI. Oh, you know what? I've heard a lot about them. I haven't used it. Do you have familiar with them, Ari?
GitLab CI.
That is true, Sebastian. I do use GitLab CI.
Gee, I wonder why.
I know it's pretty fast. I did a Nuxt website on GitLab with the static pages, and the CI is pretty fast actually, and it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, for being 100% free, like free runners and everything, it's pretty great.
Yeah, that's
and I think GitHub just released Actions too, right? So I need to I think that's now more widespread. GitHub Actions. Anybody play with that?
I saw this thing where
I didn't try.
Somebody made a candy dispenser that would respond to every push they made through GitHub Actions, which I was like, best use of GitHub Actions ever.
Wait, hold up. Send me. We got to include this link. I have not heard about this.
I saw a tweet about it, and now I'm not going to be able to find it.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst thing about Twitter.
I know. I was just scrolling through my feed, so I don't even remember who tweeted it.
Candy, that's so great.
If you liked it, maybe you can find it back.
I probably didn't. Because I'm a bad person.
Damn it.
I think somebody else had retweeted it or something.
You will never find it back.
You'll never find it ever again. It is in the Twitter black hole.
I can always try though. No, I'm always super jealous of other people who get to use modern Git tooling. Because we just have an on-prem hand-rolled server. It's super fancy.
You should tell your company to use GitLab. It can be self-hosted and everything.
Yeah, no, I should. We lost our DevOps guru recently, so any major overhauls, I think, are not going to happen.
Fair enough.
So we still use Jenkins for our build stuff, right?
Right.
I don't know if any of you have ever looked at a Jenkins.
Yeah,
it is
working for an agency in France. Yeah, well.
Yeah, we were talking about websites of 2000. That's what that looks like.
Yeah.
But it works. But yeah,
it does work.
It then gives you a nice feeling when using it. That's
you win some, lose some. Yeah. If it works, that's really all that matters, I guess. Yeah. Developer experience is just not there, though.
Yeah, I agree. That's why you should try Nuxt.
Oh,
that's a good flag.
Well, actually, we have these fancy loaders. Instead of looking at the console, at the terminal, waiting for Webpack to finish, you have a nice fancy animation with the loader for Webpack.
Okay. But I'm not about to rewrite my app just to utilize Nuxt. I'm sorry. I've already rewritten it once.
The next one.
Yes, next one. The Nuxt one.
God, I hope that never happens. But no, now I'm definitely thinking, for my next personal project, when I have spare time.
Yeah, because you have so much of that.
Yeah.
If you find, please tell me. That's
right. Yeah,
pretty hard to find.
So speaking of side projects, what do you do when you do happen to find a minute or two of spare time, Sebastian?
Well, I look at Twitter, which is actually my feed for all this open source stuff, because I usually follow a lot of developers and a lot of mentors that I do appreciate. I look at what's new in the JavaScript world and mostly in the Vue world. So let me try what's going on, trying Gritsum, trying Vuepress, and enjoying the tools around. That's, when I'm on the computer. Otherwise, I'm dancing and playing basketball.
I like it.
So are there any projects in the Vue ecosystem besides your own, Nuxt, that you're really excited about? You've mentioned Gritsum several times, so it sounds like you're pretty stoked on that.
So yeah, there is Gritsum. I really like. It comes from the Gatsby system. It's similar to Gatsby, but for Vue. I do like Vuepress, and I was happy when Evan came up with this project, because Nuxt area is not Markdown. It's mostly calling API, handling this asynchronous data. I don't want Nuxt to do everything, and Vuepress does a fantastic job for handling this static data from Markdown directory, and then generate you a nice looking website. I know that Guillaume is doing a really nice work coming on with this. I don't know if I can say it, but it's this new UI, and it will support Nuxt, but maybe. Whoops.
Ooh.
Well, that sounds exciting.
Well, I mean, this episode doesn't come out for a few weeks, so maybe by then it'll be okay.
I'm just super curious. Who do you follow on Twitter that maybe other people might not already be following? Because I'm sure pretty much everyone out there, we're already following Evan. duh. Who are the developers that you're excited about that are maybe lesser known?
That's a tough one. Actually, most of the time it's people I see on conferences. I really enjoy their talk and I follow them. And sadly, I cannot think of so many names right now. Most of the people that give talks, I do follow them because they put in, and I want to know what are they going to share next.
Yeah, I was thinking about your question, Ari. I was like, ooh, that's a really tough one. I was like, if I had to think,
I know. As soon as I asked it, I was like, that was a terrible idea.
But yeah, I will say, usually people who give talks at conferences have fairly like sort of standard content approaches to their Twitter. I know that some people are afraid of clogging their Twitter with like a bunch of non-developer related. So like, for example, my Twitter account is only developer stuff. I try not to mix any like personal with it, just make it easier to sort.
Yeah, actually, I would love to have this functionality in Twitter when I can say, is it work or is it casual? And then he would just, you could follow me for my Nuxt tweet or my basketball tweet. And then I will.
No, that would be actually really cool.
Won't be
I know some people have different accounts for that, but
it's hard to manage
multiple brands. Oh my gosh, I tried one time. Yeah. It was
like Jen Looper all the time inadvertently tweets from the Vuex account, and it cracks me up every time.
I do this with Nuxt sometimes. Sometimes I answer myself with the Nuxt account.
For me, the worst is like when you're on something like YouTube and you're logged in the wrong account and you watch a video and you're like, I just put up all the recommendations for this account and I did not mean to do that. Like I think I watched a Super Smash Bros. Tournament on like the Malpano YouTube account and I was like, oh no, now there's going to be the Super Smash all over the recommendations now. I was like, oops.
Now we know what Ben does in his spare time.
Yes, I do enjoy Smash Brothers. A good competitive fighting game.
Yeah, I've never played it. One of these days I'll have to.
Yeah.
I'll bring it to a conference. We'll have a whole Smash Bash.
Yeah.
Right.
But man, no, based on what you guys were just saying about speakers and their Twitter accounts, I'm like, uh-oh. I'm doing it wrong.
No, not at all.
I totally get like trying to be conscious of the type of content that you're even just like retweeting and liking. Like, yeah, once you've like joined the void of developer Twitter, yeah, you start filtering so much more. Because actually, I originally created my Twitter account as a concession to my viewers when I was streaming on Twitch. It was when I got 2,000 followers. I was like, I'll make a Twitter account if I hit 2,000. So originally it was just for, tweeting, hey, I'm about to live stream, you guys should watch. And now it's something totally different.
Yeah, that's it kind of put you inside this persona and it's pretty hard to move on. That's kind of weird. Or maybe I thought it was just myself having this thinking or tweeting. Like,
I totally do it too. I think we all, even if we're not totally aware of it, have a tendency to sort of curate our feeds based on how we want to be perceived. But I mean, I feel like that's just social media, plain and simple. It's just this filtered view of reality. Yeah. I feel like Twitter's at least not as bad as, say, Instagram in that respect, but...
Yeah. I think we have a Nuxt.JS Instagram account.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, Ben, I know you have an Instagram, right?
Yes, I do.
I've managed to, I think I took all the Ben Code Zen, related.
Okay, so I don't personally use Instagram, but is developer Instagram, starting to actually become a thing? Because that might be my final motivation, because my bestie all the time, she's like, well, you're not on Instagram. And I'm like, sorry, I can only manage 2 social media platforms at a time.
I think it's becoming a thing, even though I think Pinterest or Dribble has this area. And actually, I don't think there is so many developer on Instagram.
Yeah, I'd also see Instagram also more of to be honest, more of the personal life. Because it's Wes Boss and Sarah Drasner, they're better at keeping the personal stuff more towards Instagram. So whatever they're up to. And then Twitter is still usually more developer, career focused content. Yeah. So that's one way to split it up if you want. But I'm still personally trying to figure out the balance of that. as you know, managing social media accounts is not easy.
Yeah, I'm just so unapologetically me that I feel like trying to strike an actual balance would just be pointless. So I just try to not go on like really long rants on Twitter, but every once in a while I'm a little frustrated, and it happens.
Every time I do npm install or npm run build, I kind of hate Twitter because I know it's going to take a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of like social media and ecosystem, so as far as people who want to like get more involved in Nuxt, you know, is there like a Slack channel or Discord that you would recommend people joining?
Yeah. We have a Discord server, so you can join it by typing discord.nuxt.js.org. And we have a lot of channels where you can get involved, help people. There is the GitHub issues, of course. We have the Stack Overflow where you have the Nuxt question tag with Nuxt. But I also do recommend to help on the Vue.js tag, because if you learn Vue, you will be better at Nuxt. So that's the base. Vue is the base.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have the Twitter. We have a YouTube with a small video of Nuxt. And there is the documentation where you can learn. And yeah, that's it. GitHub, Twitter, and Discord.
Yeah, and there's also a Vue Mastery course on Nuxt as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there is the video on the homepage where Greg explained the benefits of Nuxt and the 7 reasons why you should use Nuxt. There is a really great course on Vue Mastery, and there is also a Vue School that did a course, and other contributors on Udemy and other platforms. But yeah, I do recommend Vue Mastery and Vue School courses because we work with them on this.
Yeah, and if you like Vue Mastery, I think someone on this podcast has some Vue Mastery courses. Shameless plugging.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But he's right, actually. Yeah,
No
that's in Vueify. That's a great video, by the way. Actually, that's how I get into Vueify.
Because of those videos?
Yeah, I never tried. I hope John will not hear this, but it's pretty hard. And I think he never tried Nuxt, but we see the concepts. We may have read the docs, but I never really tried. And watching you doing it, I had this feeling of doing it myself, and that was pretty nice.
Wow, thanks. That means a lot, actually.
And you made a difference in the world.
I know.
Oh man, I'm glad they're helping.
You didn't expect that.
No, I wasn't at all.
But that's true.
I think that's the hard part about something that's producing content is it feels like something's just sending out into a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, I don't know if this did anything, but I guess I'll keep doing it.
But I feel like that with this podcast all the time. It's been like just this weekend, like someone like tweeted and like tagged me in it about like the effect that one of the episodes had on them. And I was like, oh, people do listen to this. Okay, nice.
It's not just void.
Yes, no.
Not just a void.
No, actually, recently I listened to an episode I was on just because I really wanted to hear the information again, despite the fact that I was on it. But it was super weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
Fortunately, I didn't
to yourself.
talk too much.
Super weird.
I think a lot of people want to get involved with open source, and also Nuxt is doing such great things for the Vue ecosystem. If people wanted to start contributing back to Nuxt, what do you recommend? How should people get started?
If you want to be part of the contributors, just go to the GitHub repository of Nuxt.JS, Nuxt/Nuxt.js, and look at the issues and try to help. We have plenty of open issues, and there is some bugs that you can, I think they are not really bugs. You can help us make sure if the reputation are correct. It will save us a lot of time, and I think it will help you to deep dive inside the code. And if you want to look at this code, you can contact us on Discord. We are happy to onboard new contributors, understanding the source code of Nuxt. And happy to chat and try to answer the question. And there is plenty of Nuxt modules out there that you can look how it works. help issues, and that's how I get into Vue actually. And I think that's the best way to kind of become an expert, but understand how it works, answering people questions.
Yeah, I think it's great you all provide support for people trying to get into source code, because I know anytime you're working on a project that's not yours, it's very daunting to look and be like, oh my gosh, like what does all of this do? So props to you all for providing support on Discord when people have questions so they can actually get involved instead of opening it up and being like, nah, this is too complicated.
Yeah.
Like close.
Yeah, I wish someone would do that for me if when I wanted to contribute for a project. I think it's a good motivation. So
yeah. I know that's definitely something for work I have to help, because we're building something that's open source too. So I need to think about a good path for help, like allowing people to easily contribute without being too intimidated. So again, major props for.
Yeah, it all started with a contributing.markdown, where you explain how they can run the project locally. So how they can run Nuxt locally, and then trying to explain the directory as much as possible, even writing README inside the code. And when it gets harder, talk to a human.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, I think as we get to the end of the episode, Sebastian, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter. My username is Atinux. I don't know how you will pronounce in English, actually.
Shouldn't you know?
Every time my French accent came back.
How do you say it?
Yeah, how do you say it?
In French, I say Atinux.
That sounds way cooler.
Yeah, because the American, I think, would be Atinux, because it's spelled Atinux. But I think your way sounds way better.
Atinux. So I'm on Twitter. I'm on GitHub with Atinux and Atinux.com.
Fantastic.
And then you got all the links.
Yes, we'll make sure to include those in the show notes so you can find and follow Sebastian. I'm sure there'll be a new Twitter video of him dancing at a conference sometime in the near future. So look out for that. With that said, though,
Amsterdam 2020, I might dance again on stage.
Ooh, so yes, even more reason. So for those looking to plan travels for next year, Vue.js Amsterdam is happening. So, ask your boss for money.
Or submit a talk.
Actually, that's the easy way. You could do that too. Ari, any final questions for Sebastian before we wrap up and move on to picks?
Well, it's been very informative, though. I've learned a lot, so thank you.
Thank you, Ari, for listening.
Fantastic.
Have you ever felt like JavaScript is just everywhere? Well, we have. We actually had a conversation on JavaScript Jabber about what you can build with JavaScript. We've also talked about what JavaScript is and how we're inspired by the language. If you're interested in JavaScript or doing web development, then you definitely need to check out JavaScript Jabber. You can find it at javascriptjabber.com.
So as far as picks go, Ari, you want to start us off?
Sure. I have one pick today, like usual. It is a Netflix show called Grace and Frankie, starring Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. It is incredible. Also co-starring Martin Sheen and, oh God, what is his name? Law and Order dude. Oh God.
It's okay. We'll just call him Law and Order dude.
So the premise of the show is that Grace and Frankie are married to, I don't remember, Saul and anyway, their husbands are longtime law partners, and then they, late in life, come out of the closet as lovers, leaving Grace and Frankie to sort of figure out what they're supposed to do with, the short rest of their lives. And Grace is very uptight and Frankie is very new age spiritual. And they end up sharing the beach house that they would vacation at together previously. And it's about how their friendship evolves and how they manage to move on. It is very funny. They make a product and sell it. I won't say what that product is, but it's funny. But I highly recommend the show. I think there's 3 seasons out now. And That is my only pick.
Okay.
Great. Sebastian, what picks do you have for us this week?
Well, I'm listening an artist for 2 weeks now, and I really do love this music. I actually code with this music. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I guess you will write it down on the article next to the podcast. It's called Thylacine. How would you pronounce it?
Thylacine?
Yeah, and it sounds Spotify, YouTube, and I would say it's kind of electro, but I do love this music. It's kind of jazzy at some time. So there is this, and I'm rewatching Friends with my girlfriend. We do love this show, so actually I would recommend people if they want to chill out and watch again some old American TV show.
What season are you on right now?
Well, the number I won't say, but it's when Phoebe is going to get back with Mike. So I would say that Rachel has the baby, but I don't want to spoil it for people that never seen the show.
I mean, I feel like, 10 plus years, spoiler alerts are off the table.
Yeah, that's great.
And I would I would definitely recommend the Vuex 1.1 and Gridsom 0.7. That's my pick for this week.
All right, great. I guess I'm last today. So as far as my picks go, for music, I've been in a real Japanese pop anime kick. So Gurenge by Lisa is actually the opening soundtrack to the anime pick, which is Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. And so if anyone's looking kind of it's a little bit like shonen anime, but it's a little bit more there's a bit more violence on it. So it's a little bit more gory, but they did a really great job with it. And so if you're looking for new anime, check out Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. It's on Hulu if you're looking to, have an official license watch.
Opposed to what, Ben?
Torrenting or, sketchy sites that might be stealing your data, I guess.
Shouldn't do.
But as far as my book pick for this week, actually, I'm not done with it yet, but for those that really like Bad Blood, for Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos thing, check out Super Pumped. I think it was just released last week. It's basically about the rise and pretty much fall of Uber. And so it gets into the history of Silicon Valley companies and really how Uber became what it did. It goes into the various founders and venture capitalists. And so as someone who likes to keep up with tech, I actually learned a lot.
It made me want to read it.
Yeah, I learned a lot about tech in Silicon Valley and how things came to be. And he does such a great job explaining the natural progression of how things have happened and the various things that Uber did in order to establish its dominance, some of the more questionable things, and just a really fascinating piece on just the whole arena. So, if you're into this sort of Silicon Valley startups and stuff, Super Pumped is a must read. And if anyone wants to talk about it, just hit me up. My DMs are open.
Yeah, I think I will read it and DM you.
Yes, please. Oh my gosh, it's so fascinating.
Yeah, I read someone who tweeted the day it came out. It was today I learned that Uber spent some ridiculous amount of money on essentially a week-long party. And I was like, oh, cool.
Whoa. Yeah, it was
$25 million on a company retreat in Vegas. It was a weekend.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was more than one of their series round. It was in the spending they had is just crazy. And again, I know that there's obviously a lot of controversy when it comes to Uber and some of its workplace practices. But again, it's still fascinating to learn about the origins and how that came to be. Because anything else, it's a double-edged sword. There were things that were really positive about the way Uber approached it, and obviously there are negatives. And so taking it from a more academic perspective, Super Pumped is just a really great read. So highly recommended.
I'm actually ordering it right now on Amazon.
Awesome. Yes, you and I will chat more about this then when you start reading it. Let me know.
Yeah,
cool.
Definitely.
All right. With that is it for this episode of Views on Vue. Thank you for joining us. And until next week, enjoy the view.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more.